Once upon a time in the fishing village of Port there lived a young boy named Mhaighdean. Now Mhaighdean came from a long line of great fishermen, and he too knew one day he'd be fishing the seas just like his father, his grandfather, great-grandfather, and all those before him. And each morning before his father went out fishing, Mhaighdean would go down to the shore for a swim, and every time he was accompanied by a young seal, and they'd swim and play and swim. Mhaighdean was happy, and his heart was full of joy. Time passed, and Mhaighdean became a young man, and he too a great fisherman, like his father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and all those before him. And each morning before Mhaighdean would go out fishing, he'd go down to the shore for a swim, and every time he was accompanied by a young seal, and they'd swim and play and swim. Mhaighdean was happy, and his heart was full of joy. Until one day, as Mhaighdean was getting ready for a swim, he noticed the most beautiful maiden he had ever seen before. She was walking naked on the beach, her long black hair wet as if she just came from a swim. She seemed familiar to him, but he couldn't quite place where he'd seen her before. She too noticed him. She even called him by his name. She introduced herself as Shiva, and the two began to talk. Mhaighdean, being the true gentleman, gave her his wool jumper so she could warm up with. And they talked and laughed and talked some more. It was love at first sight. And soon thereafter, Mhaighdean and Shiva were married, and they both were happy, and their hearts were full of joy. Time passed, and they began to raise a family. Shiva wanted so much to tell Mhaighdean the truth about who she was and her longing for the sea. But with the birth of each child and her ever-growing love for Mhaighdean, she decided to wait. At first they had 2 daughters, Saoirse and Ethna, and then a baby boy, Nollaig. It was after the birth of Nollaig that Shiva decided now was the time to tell Mhaighdean the truth about who she was, for she loved him more than anything, and she knew that Mhaighdean would accept her exactly as she was. She then sat Mhaighdean down and she says, "Mhaighdean, I must tell you the truth about who I am. I am a seal woman of the seal folk from deep at sea." Mhaighdean was a little bit surprised, and he asked her, he says, "Are you a Selkie?" And Shiva replied, "Yes, I am a Selkie, for that is what the local villagers and the fishermen call us." Mhaighdean had heard tales of the Selkie before, but thought it was just an old folk tale told by the local villagers and the fishermen. But it mattered not to Mhaighdean, for he loved her more than anything, and he accepted her for exactly who she was. And then Shiva, with seriousness in her eyes, she turns and she says to Mhaighdean, "Now listen closely, Mhaighdean. You must now go down to the shore, near the rocks to where we met that day, and you must find my seal coat, and you must hide it, so that I never see it again, or never find it. For if I do, I must return to the sea immediately, for that is the law of the Selkie." Mhaighdean rushed down to the shore, to the rocks where they met that day, and found the seal coat. He then began to walk along the jagged coast, down and around to a cave where only he and the locals knew about, for it is there where they played as youngsters. He took the seal coat deep into the darkest corner of the cave and found an abandoned chest. He put the seal coat in the chest, and he sealed the chest with seaweed and fishing line and rope and anything he could find. He then put the chest underneath the rocks and buried it, and he was sure that no one in this lifetime would ever find the seal coat. Several years had passed, and the family was happy, and their hearts were full of joy. Each day they'd swim in the sea, and by night they would sit by the fire and tell stories to their mother Shiva. Mhaighdean was quite the singer, and he had a collection of songs, and Shiva loved it when he sang at night to her favorite songs being the sad love songs. Until one day when a massive storm came in, and it lasted for 3 days and for 3 nights, pouring down rain, gale-force winds, and a fierce Atlantic. And on the 4th day, the sun came out, the skies were clear, and it was calm. The children went down to the shore to play as they normally do, and they found an abandoned old chest that had washed up during the storm. Of course, curiosity got the best of the children, and they looked inside, and what did they find but a seal coat? They were excited, they were joyous, for they had never seen a seal coat before. And they rushed up to the house. "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy, please come quick down to the shore. We found something and we must show you." Shiva then rushed down to the shore to see what all the commotion was about, and immediately upon arriving at the shore she had seen what they had found. She dropped to her knees, her heart was broken, and she began to weep like she had never wept before. The children were a little bit confused because they were just excited, and now their mother was so sad and heartbroken. And that's when Shiva turned to them, and she told them the truth about who she was, that she was a seal woman of the seal folk from deep at sea. She then took the children up to the house to wait for Mhaighdean to come home. It wasn't too long afterwards that Mhaighdean arrived home, and he saw all of them crying and heartbroken, and he knew exactly what had happened. As they began to walk down to the shore, the children clung to their mother's dress, and Mhaighdean held her hand tightly, as tight as he's ever held it before. Shiva then turned to her children and told them that no matter where she was, she'd always be with them and she'd love them forever. She gave them each a hug and a kiss, and then she turned to Mhaighdean and she said, "Mhaighdean, you are my soulmate and I'll love you forever, and you'll forever be in my heart." They embraced for a moment, and then Shiva gave a final gaze into their eyes. She then turned and stepped into the sea and vanished beneath the waves. And ever since that day, on the anniversary of their mother's departure, Mhaighdean would take his children down to the shore, and he'd sing out to Shiva her favorite song, hoping that she would hear it, hoping he would catch a glimpse of her, his beautiful wife, the port seal. And this is the song he would sing to her. It's a mermaid song. Es so gervetu no gervetu en gran Tanschnak da gefrasig favel nanan Da whole boy that just veiling so should hug Mary Henny Chinye and there na I when the village there's my one Favro Chlavis Favel Natra My Geno Waras Mo in her should hug Mary Henny Sinye in there na Hamishatershak agus begola Ma waire vranyos ma fadregban Awana danis favel natra should hug Mary Henny Sinye